This
Guy.
conference will now be recorded.
All right, welcome. I got my good buddy Johnny Parks from the USTA. He is the senior manager of IB for PD for player development. So identification in the world for athletes and scouting, and then being able to do player development. Stoked to have you on, buddy. You know, it's been a few years that we've known each other now, and you know we're always trying to get together. And it's like, man, I'm here, I'm there. You know, I'm here, I'm there. And so quarantine, the silver lining is I'm just grateful to spend some time with you this morning and really, you know, pick your brain and talk about tennis performance and life overall. So thanks for being on, bud.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. It's we've been going back and forwards, and it's aligning schedules is it's been a little tricky, and obviously we're in a tough period of time. Everyone's in a tough stage at the minute with everything going on, and I think I'm on the fortunate side that we're still able to do a lot of things, and we've got a lot of different elements that we're doing to connect with coaches and around the private sector and around the country. And so we're just trying to do our best to serve them and the sections as much as possible at the minute. So fortunate, but as good friend Jose Higueras always says, when we're faced with adversity, it presents an opportunity, and how do you take that opportunity to make things better? So yeah, we'll see how we all come out of it.
Speaking of that, I think, you know, adversity and adaptation are two things that in sport we have to be successful, right? The best in the world are able to adapt, and I think that goes everywhere from the physical to the performance side of it. And you know, one thing that is neat about being able to watch you grow over the last few years and you know see the kind of parallel situations. But right now, take me into how you're working with your athletes. Let's talk about that, for instance. Obviously it's hard to have the social distancing. A lot of the, you know, I don't know if the PD is shut down, but how are you managing your athletes right now? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I mean, from our perspective, overseeing our camp and training structure for 14, 15 and under, I mean, all the camps are obviously not happening. So how are we still able to connect with those players, parents, and coaches is been our, I guess, our biggest challenge and opportunity. So, within that, we've come up with a learning series that we're doing every Monday that we send out to massive list of coaches that we have that have gone through either our high performance coaching program or all the coaches that we've been connected through our camp network, and obviously all the players that go through that. So that webinar series was great. I mean, the last one we just did had up close to 500 people join live, and another I think it was another 500 people that are going to watch the webinar and access the resources after the webinar at another time. So that's one area. Another area we're trying to look at is the players that were getting invited to come to camps and trainings in Orlando, is how we connect with them to provide them a similar experience. And so we're exploring a few different options there on how we connect with them and how our national coaches connect with those players, parents, and coaches. And we're trying to find ways to, on a weekly basis, give them some little pieces of, whether you want to call them homework or challenges and activities each week, whether that's from the tennis side with, all of it is in the framework of obviously being at home, and from being at home on a tennis standpoint, maybe what you could do against a wall, what you can do with your athletic development, strength and conditioning, and mental skills as well. And other pieces to that's like nutrition and hydration. So all that's stuff we're looking.
That's a lot. Oh wait, you still on mute? Okay. Family time. Are you there?
There we go. Sorry, we're back. Yeah.
Okay. This is part of quarantine work. I get it. Family's definitely part of it. But going into that, I think that's one of the areas. Obviously, you were able to come through Racket Fit, and being an identification coach. I want to go into the body a little bit and just kind of what you got out of Racket Fit, what you thought were some important things that you can take in, but more importantly, how you're working with your players on physical limitations right now. As a talent identification and performance identification coach. So first of all, like where were your thoughts at with screening prior to attending Rack Fit and then kind of after attending Rack Fit?
Yeah, so I guess in the stuff that we do in player development, our sports science committee had developed a high performance profile, which was essentially a battery of 10 tests that look for instabilities and immobilities ranging from the shoulder through the, I mean, basically through the midsection, through hips, through the body, and then looking at not so much, it's not nothing as a predictor of injury or anything like that, but just saying, you know, what are some of the immobilities that they're having, and then, you know, what are maybe some of the corrective exercises that we can assign to them as part of their warm-ups or cool downs that can help them in those areas. Now, obviously, when kids going through growth and development, that changes very rapidly. Yeah. And so being able to keep tabs on that and then just offer some basic programming that they can add to their warm-ups, cool downs, or fitness S&C sessions is how we're using it. You know, it was very interesting. I mean, we're very fortunate, obviously, in our situation on the campus that we have an athletic medicine team that spearheads that, and we're able to do that. But, you know, one thing that I thought was great out of Racket Fit was it took me back to, you know, if I was in the private sector still and I had my own program, and as a coach, like many coaches around the country, you are pretty much, whether you choose to be or whether you are forced to be, you are having to be a generalist. You need to look out for your players' well-being from a on-court, off-court, a technical, tactical, mental, physical perspective. And, you know, a lot of programs out there don't have the ability to have specialists in each of those areas. And so as a tennis coach, how do you increase your knowledge in the mental side and maybe supplying a mental skills program? How do you supply an athletic development program or a strength and conditioning program in the best appropriate way? Obviously, I think with strength and conditioning, we get to a certain point, you need, you know, certified professionals doing that. But you know, and then this was like another piece that just wasn't around, you know, even a few years ago, right? I mean, when you first came on the scene, I think I just joined PD, and we were both presenting at a conference in the Intermountain section, I believe. I think that's where we first met. And I remember, I mean, I presented on the AD stuff, and then you were right after me. And I remember going through it and doing a couple of the little tasters that you were giving us. And I remember thinking, wow, like, you know, if I was back in my program, developing my academy, I mean, this would be a huge piece that I could add to my program. And, you know, I just thought it was it would provide another layer, some more information around our athletes and where they're at and where we could help them with the type of programming we put together. And so, you know, it was really eye-opening. I've been trying to do it for the past like 2 years, but every time we've had it in Orlando, or even I looked at doing it in Atlanta one year, I mean, you know, our camp structure and schedule was pretty hectic. But earlier this year, it was able to align. So I was really happy I could do it. And yeah, so appreciate you bringing me on and having me do it. Yeah.
I think, you know, how have you been using it with your players right now? Obviously, with like developing your system and approaching of how you look at your athletes, like how have you used it since you took the course? Is there anything that you've done that you've seen that's like, wow, it's been like, okay, cool, from your perspective? Like you're cool, you're great because at the USTA PD, you've got that team approach, right? You've got the strength conditioning, the medical, and the coaches being able to all speak in the same language. But even from your coaching perspective, what are some things that have kind of, you know, come up and helped out, or until this quarantine, which I want to get into in the second half of this, that I think is really important. But how has that helped you?
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, so the unfortunate part is that in my mind, it was I was actually starting to explore like how I would maybe just take some of the exercises that you'd shown us that would be able to give us an idea maybe why they're having certain issues on their serve, and I was starting to explore like when would I do this test and how would I go about it? Like if you know, it's quite, you know, it doesn't take that much time to do it. I didn't have the chance to implement any of it with any of our kids because shortly after that, that's when everything shut down. You know, but I thought, how could you take elements of this test and actually do some of it maybe at the beginning of a warm up or even at the end of a practice, just to see how you could maybe more subtly incorporate it into the daily program. And so that's the way that my mind was starting to think, like, you know, doing the things with the racket to test the sort of mobilities and obviously like the scapula and all. I was like, you know, we do exercises that try to improve those areas, but how about let's take stock of it first, and you can do it right there and then on the court. So that's where my mind was starting to shift and is shifting and generating ideas. You know, and then actually since then, I've been going back over the materials that we went through that weekend, and I think by going back over it and experiencing, like, you had us all in groups that you know, we get with a partner and we test each other and we try some things out and we go through that. For me, I really wanted to go back through the material, and honestly, I'm gonna start doing it again, but probably on my wife. You know, she doesn't maybe know it yet, but you know what I mean. So I wanted to get a little bit more practice at it and start connecting some dots, because you set the framework up and you set up the knowledge, and obviously doing the short course before you get to do the Racket Fit course in person was a big help in just teeing it all up. But to me, there's nothing like quite doing something in person. I mean, yes, you're great to develop knowledge and things online and going through that to set things, but actually doing it in person, there's just nothing quite like that in any type of educational development setting. So that to me then provided another layer of for me to connect the dots. And then the next parts now is, how do I go and do this on my own and feel confident enough that I know where to insert this into my programming. And so that's you know, I like to make sure that I'm doing my due diligence with things and building my competency, you know, and before actually executing. So we're sort of on that path at the minute of building that competency and building that strategy around where to use it. So, but yeah.
No, and that's why I love working with you, is because you're constantly learning, and you're like me. If you're not, you know, teaching a seminar or working with your athletes, you're at a seminar. And you know, the thing is, we're always trying to strive to be better and grow. And so that's good to hear from my perspective, because I'm like, okay, you know, one thing that I've noticed with our Racket Fit certifieds is that they're able to do a lot of this over Skype or Zoom now, because our screens are our screens. And if you can just teach a parent, hey, I need you just to hold here on the, you know, pelvis or the shoulders. Well, as a coach, if you can't be on court right now, but you can see a physical limitation, it's like you just said, if you have the dots connected, well, hey, here are 3 correctives I can give you right now. And at least we can get you moving, and then I can get you into doing footwork exercises or whatever we have you doing this week for PD. So that's really cool, and that's awesome to hear.
Well, that's a great point. And to be honest, I hadn't really started processing that could be a really cool direction to go in. But you're right. Like, you can give the teaching and the coaching through here, and you could have them do the exercise, and you can see, you know, like if you turn sideways now and did the shot, you know, did the test, bring the arm, you know, you do that, bring it up. I can see the degrees in which, you know, is this a fail, is this a pass, and you know, I think that would be great. And for coaches now, that, you know, coaches are looking for education and they're looking for ways to connect with their players, and that's ultimately what we're trying to help them with as well, right? I mean, you're doing it, we're doing it. Like, how can coaches keep connected to their programs? It's not so much about, like, again, like, okay, we produce these webinars which connects us to coaches, parents, and players, but it's almost like, you know, how can we help so that the actual coaches can then take this and do it with their own players and stay connected to them that way. And then this is the part of that team approach is, this is finding a way to take one element of the team approach, which is almost like the prehab rehab side, right? And this is what you could do right now. And so we get asked questions all the time, like, what stretches and mobility exercises can we do? Well, hey, if you've got a coach that has gone through Racket Fit, they can actually take you through the tests and then can prescribe you or you know, prescribe you the correctives or exercises to work on it at this time. So, you know, that's great that they can use this platform as well. So it's actually quite easy, right, to use the platform.
It's fun too. I mean, and then your athlete feels like they've got a connection with you. They see what you're doing and they feel the difference immediately, which I think is always a great thing as a coach. Like, it's one thing you talk about is, you know, you got to make sure not only do they know what you're talking about, can they feel what you're talking about? Can they actually load into that and feel where they're feeling or trying to get you to get that cueing? And from a coach that can't be on court, well, now, you know, times are changing. We've got to, you know, start adapting to, I think, what's going to be our new world for a while. And, you know, from a professional I guess, growth perspective, like what are some of the things that you've seen? Because obviously this is to help parents and you know, athletes stay happy and healthy in quarantine. That's why I'm doing a lot of these videos. What's kind of been the pH of some of your athletes? Like, what are they saying? Are they, you know, looking at the silver lining of it? Like, how are you working with them on the mental side? What are some things that you're doing there from the USPTA perspective or USTA to help out some of these athletes that have missed their, like maybe senior season, or they're missing that national tournament? Like, what's the pH of the energy or the, you know, emotions right now?
Yeah, well, it's a tough one because you know, I think around the country everyone's in slightly different positions, so it's tough to know what everyone is doing. And again, I mean, at the minute, the you know, the USTA had issued that we need to take this sort of collective pause from playing to make sure that we're, you know, for the health and well-being. But you know, out there, all the kids are out there just itching to play and get on court, and you know that's natural. So I think the key is we have our framework with the mental skill side, which is our 7 core values of competing like a champion. And it's, you know, at the camps, we usually take one of those elements and we talk them through, you know, or we don't talk them through, we get them to come up with exercises that get to provide examples of, say, like resiliency. Provide an example of resiliency that you've seen when watching a match on TV. Provide examples of resilience off the court. You know, what does that look like? How do they relate with each other? And you know, and then you get given an exercise of, you know, how do we build resiliency? So it's first of all like that, the awareness, then it's building the knowledge, and then it's building the application of how to improve in those areas. And you can definitely, you know, I think a big one of a lot of athletes can do right now is visualization. You know, there's definitely research out there on visualization that actually it helps with performance, right? I mean, you picture yourself doing something and you can then go out there and do it. So right now, players can be putting together visuals of how they, you know, their technical abilities. If they're working on their serve, you know, how to visualize how they want to actually hit their serve versus, you know, not wanting to. So, you know, and then, you know, what comes with that is, as well as we often talk about in between points routines with players, you know, solidifying what your routine is. And what comes with routines is breathing and being able to manage emotions. And so there's definitely some things that they can work on. I mean, breathing, visualization, journaling. I mean, I'm really huge on journaling. We have a player development journal that we use for every single camp. And in that, yeah, it's got some information, but the biggest key in all of that is there's something to be said for people just reflecting back on a practice or a match that they've just played, hopefully in a positive way or in a productive way, but also how you set up a practice. So there's a reason why we warm up. We warm up hopefully physically for the physical and mental benefit of being able to prepare the right way. But journaling also sets the premise for all that. It really brings clarity to the way in which that we want to approach a practice or a match. So, you know, journaling is another thing we can do. You know, the tennis and the physical side is always going to be a tough one because it's going to be determined on what the person has at home. You know, what kind of equipment they have, or, you know, or what they can get creative with. Like a lot of my weights are sandbags, because I've got a bunch of sandbags left over from the, you know, from hurricanes we get coming through, and we load up on sandbags. So I'm doing tons of stuff with that. And the tennis side, I mean, unless you've got a court in your backyard, I don't know what else you can do other than use this as an opportunity to work on your continental grip skills, or to work on you know, your technique by, you know, looking in a mirror and shadow swinging. So I think the temperature is kids are wanting to do it. You know, it's almost like the things that you want them to do when they are in a regular schedule, but either don't find the time to do, or maybe a little reluctant to do, they're now really wanting to do.
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, when you're squeezed of being able to do some of the things you want to do, you find other ways to stay connected. And that's what people are doing now. And that's actually the really cool thing about what we're seeing on, you know, I check out social media and all that. And obviously the first like week or two this happened, we were in this situation, the explosion of like workout plans online and everyone, which is great, but at the same time it's, you know, but now we're started calming down a bit, and people are starting to set into a schedule of what they think is good for them. And you know, and they're getting creative. I mean, they're really coming up with some good creative things, which is what it used to be like before the, I guess, the hyper professionalization of youth sports, let's say. But again, I mean, it's great that kids are looking for it, parents are looking for it, you know, and obviously coaches are just trying to find ways to keep getting better and stay connected. So yeah, the temperature's a little, you know, it's a little all over the place depending on what they've got access to. But yeah, there's definitely a thirst for knowledge and application right now.
No, I think all those are amazing tips, because right now I think those are things that kids can do. They can, parents can implement that today, all those things that you just said. And the visualization side, like if they've got video of them playing where their coach is like, look, I love this serve, being able to watch that as well. You know what I mean? Going back to things they like, hey, what do I do good? What can I do better? And then checking off, instead of being like, man, this is what I do horrible, working on some of the strengths and some of the limitations, and being like, when you come out of this, you're a beast. I think a lot of, you know, the parents that have called me, they're like, you know, I'm really worried my kid's going to regress. And I'm like, well, what were things that they needed to work on? Like, was there any pain? Was there any problems? You know, was there concentration issues? I'd be working with a mental coach. I'd be, you know, reaching out to these people that they can do things right now that can make them a stronger athlete when they come out of this. Because like you said, physical is always going to be there. It's going to matter of how you're going to do it. So getting creative, I like that. And then you guys are doing, go ahead.
No, so that's a great point, because, you know, I mean, when we're in the space of player ID, which is mostly all 14, 15 and under. So we deal with that transition from childhood to adulthood, or go from childhood through pre-puberty to post-puberty. And obviously you see a lot of injuries at that phase, whether, okay, let's say there's overuse injuries, but a lot of injuries will happen because of natural occurrences in growth and development that is so individual. So you see a lot of injuries to the shoulders and knee pain and, you know, hip tightness and, you know, lower back tightness, things like that. And that what I think we all need to understand is that's going to be a natural occurrence whether you play a sport or not. Obviously, I think playing sport elevates the you know, it brings it to the forefront, you know, when you start to feel a little bit of pain in your legs, because you're obviously so dynamic and in a movement-based sport. So right now is almost, yeah, okay, we're on a collective pause from playing. So if you do have those little niggles and you do have those little injuries, then now is the right time to then really address that and spend the time to go through it, you know.
I'm sorry.
So we're always finding that.
There's a train and everything's going by. We got military helicopters flying over my house because we're right next to the beach, so I apologize about the sound.
Oh, it's all good. You know, I'm just saying, we always try and find this balance. I think the kids and parents, coaches, we're finding this balance between knowing that, you know, maybe there's some pain or some injuries that are growth related. So what does that mean for your program? And to me, I always will say the same thing. Whenever you're going through growth and extreme growth, it's like you do have an injury, and what you would do with you know, maybe not obviously a serious injury, is you dial back the volume of how much you're doing, and you increase the amount of time that you put to corrective exercises and, you know, things that can help to make you a little bit more mobile, agile, a little bit more flexible as obviously muscles catching up to bone. And so this is a really perfect time for those players that are on a bit of a pause, that have little niggling injuries, to do those corrective exercises and to improve in those areas. So, you know, that's a good point you make.
Man, it's so good seeing you. It's good spending some time with you. I know it's crazy. I appreciate you coming on to help out like the kids and the parents, give them some tools, you know, especially from a coach as, you know, distinguished as you. It's cool to have you on here for them. Is there, like, if people want to like follow your Instagram, I'll obviously put this in the bottom of the video, but like, how are ways they can reach out to you? Like, if you know, I'm not,
So,
time is limited, but like, where can they follow you to get some of the tips that you're giving out?
yeah, so I mean, there is my Instagram is, I think it's at Johnny_Parks. And, you know, if you follow me on Instagram, you're definitely going to see three things. You're going to see some tips. You know, I like putting up tips. You're going to see you're going to see me doing some athletic development. Absolutely. You know, I'm a big nut for that. I'm putting together exercises, or, you know, a lot of what we take is from stuff that's been done in the past. And then what I like to do is take some really just some really simple, basic but cool exercises that have multiple layers of challenging you not just physically, but mentally, decision making, problem solving, all that type of stuff. And I try to get creative with how we can, make little nuances of it. So, a lot of the stuff I use is stuff that's been around for decades. It's stuff I used to do when I was a kid. I just maybe like get creative and modify it, in some ways, or provide levels. And then the third thing you're going to see is I've got a little 3-year-old that is super, super active. I mean, active. We've got trampoline in the back. We've got scooters and balance bikes, tons of different balls running around, balloons everywhere. So you're going to see me doing tons of like stuff with her that is just off the wall, and it's all stuff that she wants to do. It's like I show her one thing and then she like starts making up her own games, which is like really cool. The latest is she wakes up every morning and she wants either her mum or her papa to have her on her back and makes us do push-ups. So we're on like a Bosu ball with her on her back, and she's counting out 10 push-ups for us whilst just lying on our back. And that's her big thing every morning right now, past few days. So there's that Instagram, and then the Twitter handle, I believe, is at Johnny Parks 1. I use Twitter as a source for all my a lot of actually just education myself. I follow a lot of people on Twitter in the tennis world and strength and conditioning world, athletic development world, to better my knowledge or to reach out to people to gain a better understanding of what it is that they're doing. I think that's important, is using those channels, not just to copy paste, but to if I see something that I like, I need to understand the context around it first. So I'll reach out via direct message and just ask some questions around it, and I'm not sort of afraid to just put myself out on a limb there and seek out information. And so those are the two main things that you can find me at.
Those are great ways to network. I mean, for parents and people that are watching, like go look at the people out there, like reach out to them. Right now people have time to share, and people are sharing time. So, right now is a really good opportunity to go and do that. Start looking at different people, how they're developing and leading. So that's a really good point as well. All right, brother. Well, I appreciate you. Tell everybody at the USTA that definitely wish him the best, and hopefully we get out of this quick, and definitely prayers for New York, and that we can have the US hopefully this year.
Yeah, thanks, man. And same to you. Hope you're staying safe and well over there in San Diego.
All right, man. Cheers.